Hey, how's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the New York Cross Harbor in Trainz, where today we're going to be working on the yard at Bush Terminal here, the main Bush Terminal yard, where most of the operations of this area occur. This is right at 51st Street up to about 45th Street we'll be working today, roughly. We cover a lot of area in this episode, but I feel like I don't really get a whole lot done. It's sort of weird. I jump around a little bit trying to get areas detailed and get some coverage on some of this baseboard, but we get some stuff done, and I think you guys are gonna like what you see. The first thing I'm getting started on here is the two main building structures that are still in the Bush Terminal yard area. Again, I don't know what a lot of these facilities do. I'm just looking at Google Earth and kind of recreating what I see, as well as some of the things that I've seen from my experiences actually being in the area. So these two big warehouse structures are still standing today, and adjacent to them, which we'll get to in a few moments here in the video, is the foundations of two other structures that used to be there, but they are no longer there. Some of the details on these buildings are this awning and some auxiliary building warehouse structures coming out of the sides there, which I tried to include. Right here, I'm working on 51st Street. I realized I did not include this for some reason when I laid out the roads, so I'm going to put that in there. And at this location, I'm not sure what this facility is here, but there's always a lot of garbage trucks, like waste management garbage trucks parked outside. So I'm not sure if they process recyclables or garbage here, or if they just clean the trucks. I think that they just clean the trucks. So that's sort of what I'm going for. I've got a few of these buildings, some of my assets that I'm trying to include there. And man, the time lapse is going quick. Okay, so just behind here was a pier behind this garbage plant, or garbage truck cleaning facility. And a lot of these docks and piers, I'm going to probably use that term interchangeably throughout this. A lot of these have been abandoned. They were very prominent in the 1920s, 30s, 40s, and 50s when this was like a major shipping hub and the Army terminal was here, but have since gone defunct. But a lot of the remnants of those piers still remain in a lot of areas. Some of them are still functional. Some of them just sort of exist with some structures on them. This one does still exist with some structures on it, but I don't know if it's used for anything in particular, but I wanted to include it here in this build. So instead of using the actual terrain and working it out that way, I'm using one of these JR piling. Is that what it's called? Piling? Yeah, things here, along with a concrete spline to recreate that. Some of the other docks are a little bit more worn down. I'll do one of those a little bit later in this video, where it's sort of just half sunken into the water and just completely disused. So we'll get to that soon too. But back to our garbage truck cleaning area here, I found a couple of waste management trucks, which I'm going to include, parked on the side of the road here, kind of queued up. Every time I've been to this area, there's just dozens of these things sort of lined up all along the streets. And again, when I'm building this, I'm using like the 1980s, 1990s as my, prototype in my mind, but I'm again building from what I've seen in present day. So, the lines are a little bit blurred, and it's, who cares? But I just feel like I have to kind of note that, because somebody is bound to comment like, oh, it doesn't look like that in today, or it doesn't look like that in the 1980s or whatever. This yard went under so many changes in a very short amount of time, from the 80s to the 90s. So in just the span of a decade, a lot had changed here. If you go to historic aerials and you look at the Bush Terminal area here, you'll see a lot of track that doesn't exist anymore. This was a huge yard, and in fact, in this corner here, right where these shrubs are that I'm placing down, up until like the mid 1980s, there was like a big coaling tower. I'm not even sure what its purpose was, but there was one of those big concrete coaling towers in that spot until like 1985 or something like that. So a lot has changed in this area, and a lot has sort of stayed the same too. So it's just a matter of deciding what I want to model versus what I don't want to model. So obviously today it's almost completely defunct. I think the New York, New Jersey Railroad, which operates these tracks these days, they operate out of the 65th Street yard up the road a little bit. They don't really use this yard for too much anymore. Maybe some car storage and some like runaround moves for the recycling facility that's down on like 30th Street. But that's about it. So I'm not modeling that. That's not that interesting. So I'm trying to model this in an era that is going to be operationally interesting and just like look cool. So, you know, whatever, take that as you will. Again, one of the things here that I'm putting in is this parking lot right here. I don't know when this parking lot was an addition, when it was added in, but that's what's there now. It used to be tracks. All of the area here that you see that is empty was tracks. This yard had a double yard ladder on each end, and it had stub tracks on both sides with a double-ended yard in the middle. And I want to say that at its peak, they would process like over 1,000 cars a day or something like that, like in the 1950s. Like absolutely outrageous amount of operational potential here. If you ever wanted to backdate this route to, you know, the 1940s or 1950s, like World War II era, man, this place would be booming. Which would be really cool, but I don't really care to model the transition era, so or the steam era, so that's not really my cup of tea. So here we're moving to these abandoned structures here. I took the two buildings and I copied them over, and I used the paint under tool to add some texture underneath as the building foundation. And it's really hard to tell in Google Earth exactly like what's going on here. Like there's definitely a big scar in the earth at this spot, but it's hard to tell like if it's deep or if it's like ground level. And if you make a trip there today, like a lot of this area has been turned into a park, so it's completely different than what I'm modeling or what you see on Google. So it gets really challenging. So I'm just trying to do my best to add somewhat of a construction scene, not a construction, like a deconstruction scene here with some debris and piles of, you know, things here and there. And it also looks like they use this area for some truck storage or container storage, so eventually I'll work some of that in. But again, for some reason, when I was working on this build, I felt like I was touching a lot of things, but not really getting anything done, like complete. So even this area, like I kind of placed down a whole bunch of this debris and then I move along. So I don't know if that was just some boredom or ADD or what, but like a lot of this area is somewhat incomplete. And you know, part of it is that I almost just don't even know how to reproduce or recreate some of the stuff that I'm seeing in Google. It's a real challenge because it's such a dense area. And it's industrial and it's urban and it's also abandoned, but it's not totally abandoned. So there's a lot of different things going on at this location. So all right, at this point now I'm turning my attention back to the main part of the yard here. This is what is now, or what was, a team track area. Where there was actually a lot of industries that worked out of this team track, these like 3 or 4 tracks that are located right within this perimeter of this fence that I'm putting down here. And I'm gonna model a few of those, but I mean, there was like a lumber industry there. There was a company called Safety Clean, which had a spot to load tank cars full of waste oil. They operated out of there. There was a scrap facility. Davidson Pipe operated out of here. So a whole bunch of industries used this main part of the yard, this team track area for interchange loading and unloading cars. So I try to work a little bit of that in there. They had paved over this whole area and you know, made it accessible for trucks to be able to pull in right up to the track side and get nice and close to any of the rail cars that they need to load and unload. So of course that's what I'm trying to accomplish here. So lots of details here to just illustrate that there's a lot of different interchange traffic happening here, a lot of different industries using this area. And of course, this area would not be complete without a whole lot of pavement damage and oil spots and that sort of thing. Like, these kind of details really bring this location to life, in my opinion, because this area is in terrible conditions. So all the potholes and the road damage really help. So right behind this building here are 3 tracks. That area was the engine storage building, or engine, what do you call it? Yeah, like an engine shed. This is a very unique looking building. It's sort of a not a triangle shape, but it's got an angle cut out of it. So I don't really know how I want to model that. I leave it empty for this video, and I haven't really decided what I'm gonna do. I didn't want to place down some faux buildings there to you know, sort of fake this engine shed, and of course I'm not going to use some random engine shed that I found. So I'm half considering maybe trying to build the building in Blender, because I have pictures of it and from all angles, and the building does still exist, so you can get like measurements off of Google. So I don't know if I'm going to try to do that or if I'm just going to leave those 3 tracks empty. But if you've ever seen photos of this area in real life, there is a caboose that is parked there. That is the old New York Cross Harbor caboose that is still in this location, I believe, to this day. I've got a photo of it. I'll put it up on the screen. And that I believe is in that location there, right where those 3 tracks are. And it was used as a yard office for a little while, and I believe they used it for shoving maneuvers back in the 80s, but otherwise it was just used as a yard office and just sat in place and rotted for a long time. So right here I just used a piece of track to create a nice even edge for my seawall here. And again, this... I don't know where my mind was at when I was working on this video, I'm not gonna lie. I tried to cover a lot of area, but I just didn't succeed at really doing a good job of any of it, I feel like. It's so sad. But it's, like I said, it's sort of tough looking at Google and trying to figure out where exactly are proper roads and how are vehicles getting around here, because you'll see that there's just like trucks and containers and all sorts of stuff stored in a lot of different places, but it's not really clear exactly how what the movement of traffic is through here. And again, today a lot of this area is now a park, so you can't really, I couldn't go there and look, you know. But you know, I have to look at Google Earth or historic aerials to get some idea of what's going on here. But I'm trying to include some tractor trailers and things like that. This area is very busy with trucking. There's still tons of warehouses and businesses down there. They're just not rail served anymore. So there's a lot of storage for trucks, tractor trailers, and things like that. So of course we got to include that wherever possible, and I am making use of the copy and paste tool as much as possible to save myself some work, especially when it comes to cars and trucks and things that just sort of repeat. So what I'll do though, when I copy and paste, you know, groups of cars, I try to rearrange them so it's not creating a pattern throughout, but that usually works pretty well. But I'm trying to save myself as much time as possible by using the copy and paste tool, even here with the shrubs and grasses. You know, once you get like a good shrub line, like why rebuild it a bunch of times, you know, when you can take what you got and rearrange it a little bit here and there. So at this point, this is another one of these docks or piers that is completely abandoned. It is just derelict, like falling into the water. It's overgrown. I believe there was a section of rail that came out on here. Again, I don't know what the function of any of this was, what sort of structure was here or anything like that, but I know the current state of it is pretty much half submerged. So that's what I'm trying to accomplish here, throwing some broken up asphalt textures and concrete onto it, as well as grass and shrubs and things to make it look overgrown. And then in a few moments here, I'm going to begin to sink parts of it into the water. Just trying my best to use some different textures. I'm not even sure I'm totally settled on this rock texture that I'm using for my seawall or my riprap, but that's what I'm using for now. I might swap it out if I find something better. It's a little bright for my opinion, but you know, it gets the job done for now. So yeah, here we're kind of sinking it down and it has a little bit more of a natural look. So now we're behind those initial 2 buildings that we started the episode with, and again, this is another area that's a little difficult to tell exactly what's going on with, because it definitely had some piers and some buildings here, and then over the years it seems like it was used for some kind of landfill. Like, I don't know if it was landfill like a garbage landfill, or landfill as in like actual land, like just dirt and stuff being dumped in here. It's really hard to tell, and I kind of struggled to recreate it. I start doing it here and just throwing down some textures and some shrubs, and I'm going to use the copy and paste tool to just paste those shrubs in various places, because it's just sort of a semi-overgrown area. And then I just give up and just leave it. I'll come back to it. But you can see here in that Google Earth overlay that it is now a park. There's a like a soccer field there. It's an okay park. I went there a couple years ago, and it's all right. It's got some nice views of the downtown Manhattan and the Statue of Liberty, so it's kind of cool. So at this point, I'm directing my attention back to the yard, because I started to feel like I've touched a lot of different things and I didn't get anything done. So I figured, you know what, let's add some details to the yard and spruce things up a little bit here. So working back in some grass and stuff like that. I never thought I'd see the day that I'd be using this TB grass spline again. But here we are using it in 2024 in Trainz 2022. It adds some nice, grass textures to the yard, and you can obviously change the height. Bringing in some street lights here. There's about 2 street lights per block, is from what I could tell in Google Street View. So I'm just using the copy and paste tool to keep my life simple and dragging those down the length of the road. And stuff like this really adds a lot of detail and brings a lot of life to any build. Same with these power lines. They pretty much don't go anywhere, but if you look at Google Earth, they also don't look like they go anywhere in real life. So they might just be leftover, derelict, power lines from back in the day. But stuff like this is what begins to make the build feel a little bit more alive, at least in my opinion. And I think that goes for the same when you're doing something like HO scale or N scale. It's those kinds of details that really make a huge difference. Of course, this place was, and still is, very much covered in litter and garbage, so we got to work in some of that. I do create a scrapbook template to just make things a little bit easier to paste down. That's what I'm going to do right here. Place down a few piles of newspapers and garbage and tires and things like that. And what I'll do is I will just copy those and paste those and move them around. And the last thing that I'm going to do for this particular episode is just add some parked cars and parked vehicles along First Avenue here. And obviously that helps bring it to life as well. If you go there in today, this road is completely packed with cars and actually mostly tractor trailers parked on the side next to the sidewalks there. And I didn't want to do too many tractor trailers. I put a few down, but I didn't want to block the view of the yard from the road. So a little bit of like clever thinking, I suppose, just to prevent any blockage from some cool views. But I'm using these spline cars, and I'm going to mix in a few of these HP cars here and there to break up the monotony of those spline cars, so it doesn't look super repetitive. And as well as adding some of these tractor trailers, like I said, I did add them in a few spots, but not too many. But that is going to do it for the build part of this episode. Here's some cinematics for you guys to enjoy. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and I'll see you guys in the next one.